A knuckle taps the glass beside your head. Roll it down, all the way, and you already know what you've been told to do because it's everywhere. Crack it 2 inches. Pass your documents through the gap. Never put it all the way down, because the moment you do, he can see in, he can smell in, he can reach in, and the whole thing is over. I want to take that apart tonight because in this country, it is wrong in a way that costs people badly. Here's the first thing, and it surprises everybody. There is no law in Canada about how far your window has to come down. None. There's no section anywhere that says 4 inches or halfway or all the way. You will not find it because it doesn't exist. And people hear that and think they've won something. They haven't. Because that cuts both ways. And here's the other half. There is also nothing in Canadian law that says a pane of glass protects you from anything. Your car window is not a legal object. It is not a threshold. It is not a boundary. It has no status. Your front door has status. I've made a whole video about it. A car window has none, which means the entire window argument is a decoy. It is a fight over an object that was never protecting you. And while you're having it, 3 real things are happening that you're not paying any attention to at all. So tonight I'll show you the 3 things people are actually trying to accomplish by keeping that glass up, and what genuinely controls each of them in this country, because in every single case it isn't the window. I'll give you the exact words to say as it comes down. And I'll go through the trick that's gone viral on this subject, the lock the door maneuver, because it comes from somewhere else. It's built on a rule we do not have here, and it does close to nothing at a Canadian roadside. And stay with me right to the end, because the reason that trick doesn't work here is genuinely good news. It's trying to manufacture a protection that Canadian drivers already have by default, and that most of you have never been told about. It's the single biggest difference between our law and theirs on this subject, and it protects your vehicle far better than any door lock ever could. That's the part nobody explains, and that's the part you actually need. Now, this is not an anti-police video, and I won't have it turned into one. An officer walking up to a stranger's car at 11 at night, not knowing what's inside it, has every reason to want to see your hands. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, and by the end you'll understand why helping him with that is in your interest, not just his. I'm Brian Doyle. For 15 years, I worked inside the criminal courts in this country, the interview rooms, the cells, the prep meetings the night before trial. And I have never once seen a case turn on how far a window was open. I have seen a great many turn on what somebody said through it. This is legal education, not legal advice, and I'm not your lawyer. The Charter and the Criminal Code are federal. Document rules are provincial and vary a little. For your own situation, talk to a lawyer where you live, right? The 3 things. The first thing people are trying to stop is him seeing in. And this is the one where the advice is not just useless, but actively backwards. Looking through your windows is not a search. He can stand on a public road and look at whatever is visible through glass. And there is no version of Canadian law where that's a problem. So the 2-inch gap buys you nothing at all on that front. The glass is transparent. That was always the flaw in the plan. But now look at what it costs you. He is walking toward a vehicle in the dark. He cannot see your hands. He cannot see how many people are in it. He cannot see what anybody is doing. And you have just handed him the most valuable phrase in his entire vocabulary, which is a genuine, documented, defensible concern for his own safety. And officer safety is what unlocks things. It's what justifies asking you out of the vehicle. It's what justifies a pat-down during a lawful detention. It's the reason that will be written down, and it will be a good one, because it will be true. You did make it impossible for him to see. So the move is the exact opposite of what the internet tells you. Interior light on before he reaches you. Window all the way down. Both hands on the top of the wheel where they can be seen. Stop moving. You have given away nothing legal, and you have taken his best card off the table before the conversation starts. The second thing people are trying to stop is him smelling. And in this country, that ship sailed in 2018 twice over. If he has lawfully pulled you over and has a screening device with him, he can demand a breath sample from you with no reason at all. Not a smell, not slurred speech, not a weaving car, nothing. He does not need to smell alcohol to test you for it, so keeping the window up buys you precisely nothing there. And cannabis was legalized the same year. The smell of a legal substance standing on its own is a much thinner claim in Canada now than most drivers assume, and our courts were already skeptical of nose evidence long before that, for the obvious reason it can't be measured, it can't be tested, and it leaves no record anybody can check. So the glass isn't protecting you from a smell. What actually hurts you is the sentence people say next, which is the explanation. That'll be my buddy. He was smoking before he got in. I had one glass with dinner 3 hours ago. That's the damage, not the air, the narration. A smell is an unmeasurable claim by one man's nose. Your explanation is a record in your own words, on camera. Window down, mouth shut. In that order. The third thing people are trying to stop is him getting into the car, and this is the real fear underneath all of it, and it's the one the glass has never once addressed. Because here's the plain truth. A window has never stopped a lawful search in the history of this country. If an officer has a legal basis to be in that vehicle, a raised window is a delay, not a defense. And if the door is locked and he has the basis, he will open it, and a court will not care. What actually stops a search in Canada is not glass and not a lock. It's the absence of a legal basis, plus your refusal to supply the one that doesn't require any. Which brings me to the trick. You'll have seen it if you've watched anything on this subject. The exit and lock. You're told to get out when asked, then close the door and lock it behind you, and that by doing so you've re-established a barrier and forced them to go and get a warrant. It's a clever-sounding piece of advice. It's also from another country, and it's built on how vehicle searches work there. And here it does very little. Locking your door doesn't create a legal barrier in Canada because our search authority never turned on whether the door was locked. If you're lawfully arrested, a search of that vehicle connected to the arrest doesn't care about the lock. If there are genuinely urgent circumstances, the lock doesn't care. If they have a warrant, the lock is a formality. So the lock is theater. Worse, at the wrong moment it looks like something, and looking like something is the last thing you want on the shoulder of a road. But the instinct underneath the trick is right. The person who invented it understood the real problem correctly. He just built the wrong tool for our country, because here you already have something better. And I'll get to that in 2 minutes, because it's the whole ending. Now, one thing that video gets absolutely right, and I'd rather you heard it from me than learned it the hard way. If you are ordered out of that vehicle, do not lock yourself in and do not physically refuse. Not ever. Not for a second. Whatever the law is, whatever you believe about your rights, that is how people end up with broken glass and a knee in their back, and no court afterwards ever gives it back to them. Ask what the reason is, calmly, once, and then comply. You do not win anything at the side of a road. Nobody ever has. You win it afterwards, on a clean record, in front of somebody whose actual job is to decide whether that officer was entitled to do what he did. Now, everything I cover here, plus the doorstep, the breath demand, the search, and what happens in the hours after any of it goes sideways, I've put into one short plain English guide for Canada. It's called the Know Your Rights Handbook. No hard sell. If this has been useful, the link's in the description whenever you want it. Right. Here's what you actually do as that window comes down. Interior light on, engine off, window all the way, both hands on top of the wheel. Don't reach for anything, don't tidy, don't dig for your documents while he's watching you from the cruiser. Wait until he asks, and then narrate it. My wallet's in the console. I'm reaching for it now. And then the words. Windows all the way down, officer. Hands where you can see them. Here's everything you need. I'd rather not answer questions, and I don't consent to a search. Look at what that does. You've handed over every physical thing he could reasonably want and every document the law requires, immediately and without argument. There is no safety concern, no obstruction, nothing to write. And in the same breath, you've closed the only 2 doors that were ever actually yours to close, the conversation and the consent. Here's how it sounds. Lights behind you. Shoulder, engine off, light on, window down, hands on the wheel. Evening, license, registration, and insurance. Of course, my wallet's in the console. I'm reaching for it now. You hand it over. Where are you coming from tonight? I'd rather not answer questions, officer. Everything you need is right there. Mind if I take a quick look in the back? I don't consent to a search. Nothing gripped, nothing locked, nothing argued, and nothing given away either. Now the ending I promised you. Why the lock trick isn't needed here. In the country that advice comes from, there's a long-standing rule that if police have probable cause, they can search a vehicle right there on the roadside without a warrant, simply because it's a vehicle and vehicles drive away. That's the rule the lock trick is trying to fight. It's trying to manufacture a moment where they have to stop and go get a judge. We do not have that rule. In Canada, there is no general automobile exception. Police here can't search your vehicle simply because they've formed strong suspicions about it. A warrantless search of your car has to fit into a recognized category. A search connected to a lawful arrest, and it has to be genuinely connected and for a proper purpose, genuinely urgent circumstances, a specific statutory power, or your consent. That's a real difference, and it matters enormously. What that trick is straining to create out of a door lock, our law gives you as the starting position. I'll be honest about the limits, because I always am. It isn't absolute. A car can be driven away, and that mobility does feed into the urgency argument in a way it never would for a house, and courts have accepted that in plenty of cases. This is not a force field, but understand what it means for you standing there. You do not need a clever maneuver. You do not need to lock anything or perform anything or say a magic phrase. The protection is already sitting there, built into our law, waiting. There's exactly one thing that dissolves all of it in 3 seconds, and it isn't an unlocked door. It's the word yes. Every category I just listed is something an officer has to justify to somebody else afterwards. Your consent is the only route that requires no justification, leaves no grounds to be examined, and can never be reviewed by anybody. Give it, and the question of whether he was ever entitled to be in your trunk simply never comes up, because you answered it for him. So the glass was never the fight. The lock was never the fight. The word was always the fight. So let's bring it home. There's no rule in this country about how far your window comes down. There's also no protection in keeping it up. It isn't a legal object. Put it all the way down, put your interior light on, and put your hands where they can be seen. That costs you nothing legally, and it takes officer safety, the most useful phrase he owns, right off the table. He can already look in. He doesn't need to smell anything to demand a breath sample. And glass has never stopped a lawful search. Skip the lock trick. It's built on a rule we don't have, and what we do have is better. Windows all the way down, officer, hands where you can see them. Here's everything you need. I'd rather not answer questions, and I don't consent to a search. And if you're ordered out, you get out. Every time, immediately, no matter how wrong it feels. You never lock yourself in a car, and you never make it physical. If this helped you, have a look at the pinned comment where I've written that out, and send it to somebody who's been watching a lot of these videos lately. Because there's a particular kind of person who's absorbed a dozen clips of confident advice from somewhere else entirely, and one night he's going to sit behind 2 inches of glass at a Canadian roadside feeling completely certain, and it is going to go very badly for him over a tail light. Subscribe, because every week I take one more of these apart in plain English. I'm Brian Doyle. The glass was never the fight. I'll see you in the next one.